Hey guys, welcome to the Out Jeeping YouTube channel. My name's Austin, and in today's video we're getting back to working on this 1978 Jeep J10. As you can see, I finally got it into my garage so we can really start wrenching on it. In today's video we're going to be replacing the master cylinder because the brakes on this are absolutely gone. The pedal goes all the way to the floor, so the master cylinder is definitely shot. So let's get started. Alright, so these are the parts I'm going to be working with today to hopefully get these brakes going. I'm eventually going to go back and rebuild all the brakes. I got drum brakes in the rear and disc brakes in the front. But I'm going to start off by replacing the master cylinder. I tried bleeding the brakes on this Jeep about a month ago and it wasn't pushing any fluid. I tried doing the front brakes and only one of the bleeder screws came out and the other one was stripped, so I got some new ones here today because we're definitely going to have to bleed the brakes. I also picked up some rear wheel cylinders in case they are bad and decide to pop. Right now there is no leaks in the brake system, but that's because there really wasn't any pressure. So if I put a new master cylinder in, it's going to have a lot more pressure than basically nothing. So if there is some sort of leak from the rear cylinders, I can swap them out. They're cheap enough. They're only about $3.50 a piece. So this is the master cylinder I picked up for this Jeep. It's basically a 2 reservoir master cylinder. And so if we pop this cover off, which is actually rather tight on these new ones, you can see on the bottom lid we got a nice seal, so that's going to seal at the top of the reservoir. As you can see, we got 2 chambers in here, so these are 2 reservoirs for our front and rear brakes. So with this master cylinder, it doesn't look like it's painted at all, and if you throw this on there, eventually it's going to start having some surface rust on here and not look brand new again. So I'm just going to take some primer and paint this up real quick. I'm just going to tape off the top lid over here as well as where it goes into the brake booster. There's already caps on here for our line, so we don't have to worry about that. So let's go get this thing painted up, and then we'll take a look at the old one and remove that. Alright, so now I'm going to start removing the old master cylinder that's in the Jeep. And what's all connected to it right now is we just got 2 hard lines. The front one over here is going to be a 3/16 line, and the back one over here is going to be a 1/4 inch. And the sizes on these fittings that go into it, that's going to be a 1/2 inch, and that's going to be a 9/16. So if you have a line wrench, it's going to be ideal. It's going to give more contact around the bolt head over here, so it's less likely to strip out. Fortunately, I don't have a size big enough for that. I only have a 3/8, I believe. But I already cracked these free with the normal wrench, so these should come off nicely. And then we got 2 other nuts holding it onto the brake booster back here. They're going to be a 9/16 nuts, one on either side. So I'm going to pull off the lines first. I got a rag here in case some fluid comes out. Then we'll work on unbolting it from the brake booster. I just put some little bit of penetrating fluid on there, so that way it can break free the line, because as you can see it's loose, but it's kind of rust welded from the fitting to the line, and we need that to rotate, and I don't want this to snap off. And so once I pop this off, there's this fluid spewing out. I'm just going to take the rubber plugs that came with the new master cylinder and just put it in there for now, so that way it doesn't leak all the fluid everywhere, since this reservoir is pretty much filled up. So we'll just stick that in there. And it still looks like this is stuck on there, so I'm going to take a little bit of heat up that fitting and see if we can get that to break free. Looks like I'll just have to take my losses and just make a new line. This looks like it's just going to snap off with it. Alright. And I'll put the plug in on this side. And now I'll start removing the 2 nuts that connect it to the brake booster. And then we can just pull this right off. Alright, so now I'm just going to install our new master cylinder right away. You want to bleed your master cylinder. I decided I'm just going to bleed it when it's on the vehicle since I don't have a vise to bench bleed it. So I'm just going to bolt this back up right away, and then we'll start to bleed this while it's in here, and then we'll hook everything up. So I put some anti-seize on those two studs coming out of the brake booster. Line it up. And I just got some new hardware as well, since those other nuts were looking a little crusty. So as you can see, the paint job on this master cylinder didn't really go as planned. I kind of didn't cover as much as I wanted to on the front side over here, since it was kind of in the bottom on how I was painting it. And then also when I was wiping down any of the oily residue, I used a rag that had a bunch of fibers in it. Since this is a very porous material, since it's all casted, all those fibers got caught in there, and it's not perfect, but I'll just touch it up later and it should be fine. Keep it from rusting. Alright, so off camera I got everything I need to start bleeding this master cylinder while it's still in the vehicle. I went and replaced that one line that snapped off with the fitting. This basically goes down to the junction block / proportioning valve that's located on the inside of the driver's side frame rail. And just got that up here. I'm eventually going to have to shorten this up a little bit and put a flare and a fitting on there. But what I have over here, this is how we're going to bleed our master cylinder. Basically, we have a line going up and back into the reservoir as far down as it can go, because when we fill this up with fluid, it's going to push out all the air bubbles, and all the air bubbles are going to go out, and then it's going to bubble up inside the reservoir. So when you release the brakes, it's also going to retract some fluid, so we want it to retract through here, so that way it's not just sucking in air if it was above the fluid level. So now I'm going to fill up both the front and rear reservoirs, and we'll get to pumping the brakes and see if we can get all the air out of this. Alright, so after a few pumps, we're going to check our fluid level. As you can see, it went down a little bit, so we're just going to top that off once again. And then we'll keep going until we don't have any more air bubbles coming out of the lines. Alright, so now with no more air bubbles coming up from the reservoir, I'm going to take off our bleeder lines that we made and just put the rubber caps back in, so that way no fluid comes out. And then we'll hook up our lines going to the rest of the braking system up to the master cylinder. And for this one back here, since I still have the original line, I'm just going to quickly swap this in here. Now for this line, I'm just going to cut this a little bit shorter. Then I'll put our new fitting on, and I'm going to make a flare quick and then hook this up. If you're wondering how to flare brake line or fuel line, I got a separate video for that. I'll put it in a link below. Alright, so we got that line all hooked into the master cylinder, so pretty much we're all done up here. The next thing we got to do is bleed the brakes all the way around, and we just want to make sure that we have enough fluid in the reservoir as we're bleeding it, because we don't want it to run dry. Otherwise we're going to have to do the entire process over again by bleeding the master cylinder, and it's going to go through a lot of fluid. Now normally on a vehicle for bleeding the brakes, you want to start at the furthest away from the master cylinder, which would be the right rear wheel. But so far I'm not sure if those bleeder screws are going to come out, because they're probably the original wheel cylinders for the drum brakes back there. And since this is a 2 reservoir master cylinder, we can do the front and rear separate. So I'm going to start over here on the driver's side front tire. This side the bleeder screw came out about a month ago, so it should be all nice to come out now. And then on the other side we're going to have to do something because that one was all stripped out. So let's go to the front left caliper and start bleeding the brakes. Alright, so inside the wheel well here, you can see we got the bleeder screw right on top of the caliper here. And since I got some new bleeder screws that actually have a better nibble for the hose to hook onto, since this one's probably all worn and rusted out, I'm just going to go and take this off and replace it with this one right here. And then we can kind of put them side by side just to kind of compare them. The thread pitch looks to be the same. So I'll take the new one and thread it in. Alright, so that new bleeder screw is on, and the way that we're going to be bleeding the brakes today, until my friend shows up, is I'm going to be doing the one-person method, which you can simply just use some clear tube and a water bottle, fill up the bottom half with some fluid in there, and then we're going to hook it up to here, and then you can begin pumping the brakes without having to open and close the valve. So as you push down the pedal, it's going to push some fluid and air through, and then as you retract, it's going to re-suck up some fluid. So you don't want it to suck up air, so you want to make sure you have something in the bottom of this bottle over here. Alright, so I got my line and bottle all hooked up, and I got the bleeder screw cracked open. Now I'm going to start pumping and see if we can get some air bubbles coming out of here. Alright, so pretty much all the air bubbles are out on this side. Now we'll move over to the other side. Well, that was a fail over here on the passenger side. I was able to hammer out a socket up here because it was all kind of like mangled. I even heated it up to about 300 degrees. That's what it said on my temp gun. And tried to turn it a little bit. You know, had some PVA blaster in there. And it still just wouldn't budge and ended up snapping off the bleeder screw right here. So unfortunately, I can't bleed this side at all. And just glancing at the back, it looks like we got both wheel cylinders leaking, and the line looks pretty rusty going up into it. Even though I do have new wheel cylinders, I'm just going to end up having to replace all the line going to it, as well as all the drum components. And even up here, I'm probably going to have to get new calipers just to be able to have a new bleeder screw that's not seized in here. So that's pretty much where we're going to have to stop today until I get some more parts. We're going to have to rebuild the whole entire front and rear brake system. So it's definitely going to be a lot of parts coming in the near future. Alright, so that's pretty much going to be it for today's video. I don't got any more parts for the brakes to go further with it. As you saw, we got a broken bleeder screw, and the wheel cylinders in the back are shot, and I'm going to have to replace all the line for that. So I'm going to be ordering a lot of brake stuff here soon. But in the meantime, I do have some other projects. I got to replace the alternator and tidy up all this rat's nest of a wiring that's going on here, and kind of organize it and get everything so it's electrically safe and nothing that could ground out or possibly start a fire. So that's going to be coming up before we get any of the other brake stuff coming in. But I hope you guys learned something on replacing a master cylinder. It's pretty much going to be the same on newer vehicles, except that newer vehicles, most of them use a single reservoir compared to this double reservoir up here. As always, I'll post a link in the description below on all the parts I used in the video, and if you want to check out on how to flare brake and fuel line, I got a video for that as well. If you guys want to help support the channel, I got some out Jeeping decals. I got J10 decals as well as XJ decals. I'll leave a link below for that on my Etsy out Jeeping page. So I want to thank you guys for following along on the J10 build. If you guys have any questions or comments, post them below and I'll be happy to answer them. Until next time, I'll see you guys in the next video.